Hello, hello, hello. Happy Tuesday. I hope you are doing well. I hope the start of the second full week back in school of the new year is treating you, your teachers, your students, any and all of those in your sphere well. Wanted to jump in and answer some fantastic questions that we have been receiving after our strategy share out last week, where we were thinking about how can we fuel collaboration and initiate conversations and discussions and all to kind of spark that engagement around we know our students need to learn data skills, so how can we more easily help our students learn those data skills? So let's jump right in and just sort of with that reminder of how do we help all of our students build the data skills? We were talking last week on data literacy is this big thing like general literacy or numeracy. It's this foundational big set of interconnected skills that our students need to be successful here in the 21st century. So it crosses all of our subject areas, it crosses all of our grade levels. This is not just one high school class that we can take at the end of our K-12, but really we build upon that over time, which is great because that means it's not on any one of us to do this all in our everyday, in our classroom, things like that. And makes it a little complicated because it means in some ways, because we need to collaborate and we need to make sure we're sort of who's on first, what's on second. We have a sense of what that is and we have a direction of where we're going. And so that we're all working together in synergy rather than working in our silos and it's episodic, what students are getting exposed to and what skills they're picking up when and how far it goes and different things like that. So data literacy is a big thing. Yes. And this is why it's so important that we spend the time to think and collaborate and discuss and plan on how we're doing different things. And I know there are so many things going on right now that you have on your plate and that your teachers have on your plate and all of the different things depending on what role that you are sitting on. But we had a great discussion. We had lots of great discussions last week and the questions have been coming in. It's been fun talking with you all via email with some of your questions as well about what are 3 things that we can do between now and the end of the year? Because there's a million things we could do, but what are we actually going to do? Which step are we going to take to sort of start this next step towards where we want to go? So last week we talked about collectively looking at curriculum in department meetings to identify just like picking a lesson plan and just identifying as adults, sort of spending that time to think about, well, what actually are we asking our students to do? And when are they being asked to do that? And where are they being asked to do that? And what actually is it that they need to do with the data? And having that opportunity to just pause and reflect and think really critically about the different components of any learning experience that involves data can be really helpful to spark more conversations. We also talked about how we can leverage existing progressions of what the different data skills look like across different grade levels as starting points to think about either within a grade band, within a grade band or within a grade level team, within a department, thinking about, okay, so what's our lane? What are the pieces that we are going to do and what do we not need to worry about because our other colleagues within the district are going to do that? And or that opportunity to be like, okay, so how are we thinking strategically across the district to think about sort of who's doing what when to make it easiest for all of us and how does that align with our existing curriculum and how we can do things? And then we talked briefly about sort of one way to do that is by leveraging these existing progressions and do a bit of mapping based on your own curriculum, things like that. It can sound big. It actually doesn't take too much time to do that sort of surface level mapping and components and things like that. As we are going through, we do it with schools across the country. It's really fun. And it's a great first step to think about, mostly to think about like, what are we doing consistently and what are we doing really well? And then you can get into the like, and what's missing? Like what what aren't we hitting very much or hitting at all that we do actually really want our students to be picking up, or just in general, as we are building their knowledge and understanding and skill sets for the 21st century. And because many of us work in this reality, and what's maybe showing up on our state tests that isn't actually showing up really clearly in our current curriculum and the resources that we are using in our students' learning experiences. So that initial mapping can be super helpful. And actually, I have had the super exciting opportunity the last 2 days to be down with a bunch of people thinking about the data science learning progressions that came out this fall, and how can we make it better and even easier to leverage and use as an existing progression, things like that. So, but we're here to talk about questions, the questions that you or your colleagues have submitted. Super excited to jump in and think about this. So, first question, kind of question we were getting is how can I help my teachers move students past the answer is in the spreadsheet thinking? Great question. Love it. So first step, I'm going to say, is encourage them to come to our strategy shareouts, where we each month talk about different strategies to move beyond and how to help students sort of piece together those different pieces. They are free, they are recorded, as you know. So please encourage your staff or your colleagues to jump in and participate in the strategy shareouts. It's where we can dive in. We have a topic each month where we think about it and focus on it. Okay, but beyond the plug for come talk to us, we would love to talk to you. A couple other suggestions that would love to provide. So helping ourselves and our teachers and our students make this shift in terms of thinking about data as a starting point to work with or reason with or make sense of, as opposed to data is a thing that we report on, or data is a thing that gives us an answer, right? So initial positioning, it's a starting point. That is a launch pad into us actively needing to engage with it. As opposed to the latter is that is a thing in a box and it has an answer and it's clear, black and white, and it's just going to tell me the thing or I'm going to spit it back out. So we need to help our students and maybe our teachers if this is relevant, but mostly our students, make this mindset shift. The data is a tool or a means to an end. It is not the end in and of itself. The data itself, the data visualization, all of those things. So we need to sort of make that mindset shift. What are some ways that we can do that? Well, some things that we often suggest or that we facilitate when we're in department meetings or in-service working group days are questions like, well, let's all look at a data visualization. We can do this together as adults. We can also do this with our students, right? And so it's just sort of positioning that mindset shift of, rather than what do you notice, what do you wonder, what does this data make you curious about? That engages you a little bit differently than what do you notice? What do you notice, especially for our students, can feel like, oh, there's a right answer. I'm just trying to guess what you notice in the data. But when we position it as how does this make you curious? What are you curious about? Then you have to actively show up to participate in thinking through that question. Or what is missing? This one is especially fun with our students because, right, we're adults and they think adults have put everything there for us. So positioning that, oh no, what could be missing? Especially when we're using visualizations that other people put together. Every designer makes a decision about what to include and what not to include. You cannot include everything. It's also why we use samples, right? We cannot collect data on absolutely everything. So engaging our students in that thought process of, okay, so what might be missing from this visualization or from this sample of the data set that we have? And what might explain this pattern, as opposed to what is the claim? That again puts us back into that black and white thinking. What might explain this pattern gets us into reasoning about and thinking through, oh, how could this be? What might be going on? Why might I be seeing that? Into that more critical thinking stance, that sense-making stance, as opposed to the execution, get it done, state a claim type of stance. So those are some suggestions, though again, small plug, like really encourage your colleagues or your teachers to come and join us at our strategy share outs where we can dive more deeply into specific strategies about specific things. Okay, another question that we got are, what are some simple ways to bring data into department meetings without overwhelming my teachers? Okay, this is great. So we talked about a bunch last week in our strategy share out. So super encourage you to go check out that link. I'll post the link for that recording in the notes for this Ask Me Anything. It's there. It will be there for free. Check it out. But also some other things. So we talked about this last week and a few other things. So start small and focused. This is our mantra here at DataSpire. Do not throw out everything in the kitchen sink. Do not try to do everything all at once, especially in the middle of the school year, but even over the summer. It's not usually a way that we find has been very successful with teachers and schools that we work with. So start small and be focused and take one step. Try one thing or two things at a time. One thing that we heard from one of our schools that we're working with that they had done after we were in this fall, we loved and wanted to share. So we were doing our trainings and our sessions and things like that. And then the department meeting following, when we were there, they all came in. The social studies supervisor, sorry, my apologies, had a visualization, one visualization that she had all of her department look at. And there was one question for them to consider, right? So they had, in essence, one goal. They had one question that they were pursuing using that one visualization. They just got an opportunity to talk to each other as adults to think about that. Now, the visualization that she used was about students, some of the students' scores. They were looking at, yes, their social studies. This is where I got confused. Yes, their social studies, but they were looking at their student scores across the other tested subjects, because there is this move coming down from the superintendent of like, we need to help our students across all these things. And so she used the visualization as a way to spark conversations of what are we thinking about? What are we curious? What are we seeing in our students as that launch pad for the goal of, okay, so what is ours to own? How can we support our students more broadly while also being true to our social studies curriculum and content and standards that we are teaching, things like that. And she said it went fantastically. And the conversations were just buzzing and going. And the generative brainstorm that came out of it was really powerful and impactful. And it moved it from a like, oh, one more thing that has landed onto our plate into a, oh, well, what about this? Or what about that? Or how about this type of thing? Okay. Now, I am not Pollyanna. It is not rainbows and unicorns. There's so much else that we have going on, but it can be a great opportunity of a way to sort of shift how we have conversations or shift how we have discussions. So I share out in case that is helpful. You can also use questions like with encourage your students to use questions with their students, like what stands out? What would your students notice? What would you want your students to notice? So you can use that with a visualization that you're looking at. You can use it as sort of a prompting point into how are we doing our co-planning going forward, things like that. So just sort of as that reminder, as we are helping our students make this transition from our littles, early elementary, up to getting ready to graduate out of K-12, how do we progress them? How do we help them work and build their skills all along, right? Here, I'm showing you pictures of soccer because it's easier to sort of think about people doing soccer than it can be sometimes to think about people working with data. But same thing, like each step along the way, as kids are learning and playing soccer from littles all the way up to getting ready for university, if they're going on to play at the university level, how do we do that similar thing with data? And this is why we were talking about the building blocks learning progression that my colleague Molly and I had put together a couple of years ago that fed into that data science learning progression that I was telling you about that I got to work on the last couple of days. But really thinking of not only sort of what is the vertical progression, those of us in with our administrator hats across our district, but also what are our vertical progressions across different skills across our departments that we are working on to help our students build those. In the building blocks, that's a big table. There's a lot going on. So just a reminder, last week we talked about what these essential ideas are and what are keystones and all of those different pieces. So I encourage you to check those out. Okay, next question. How can I support building students' data skills when some of my teachers don't feel like data people? Ooh, I really hear this one. Okay, first off, you do not need to be a statistician or a data scientist, and we do not want all of our teachers to become statisticians and data scientists. No, 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 no. They are teachers, they have their expertise. You have your expertise. We just want to leverage that to help our students gain these 21st century skill sets and mindsets that they need. And so one is that reframing of like, we're in fact all data people because we are surrounded by data all of the time. It shows up on our social media feeds, it shows up through our news media, it shows up through our communications from our department out to our district, out to our parents. Data are everywhere. It shows up in our electricity bill, for goodness sake. Okay, so data are everywhere. All of us as adults are data people. We are more experts than our students. So we just need to sort of sit in that comfort of, great, we know more than our students. How do we help our students build these skills? And yes, our students are learning these skills earlier than we learned them ourselves. That's okay. It's a little uncomfortable, but it's totally okay. And the biggest thing that I can share is if you're working with some folks, some colleagues, or some of your staff members, and they're feeling a little reticent, I would say routine over product. Okay, so having a routine that we can use throughout the school year, we can pepper into our learning experiences, pepper into our facilitation techniques or our teaching practices in what feels comfortable for us and what works with the curriculum we have and the tools that we have right now, more than, oh, I need that thing that I need to purchase, and then that will solve all the problems, right? That's like pedestal thinking, and we don't want that. So here at DataSpire, we try to build out our resources and our supports in ways that can factor in, sort of be pulled into whatever you have, specifically around kind of building students' data skills and thinking about it and thinking about kind of what does that mean for me as I'm facilitating that situation, that's teaching situations. I'd really recommend looking at the what to ask resource and the advancing pattern recognition. And these are K-12 because we sort of identify what are the different steps along the way. So it is not the same suggestion with our kindergartners and our 12th graders, but rather you can see that vertical progression that we were talking about with those learning progressions in the last question. And so really thinking of what are ways, either when we're all together at our in-service or our department meetings where we can have shared opportunities to work with data ourselves, or just conversations about how it's going working with our students, and leveraging resources that foreground a routine we can use right now or a routine we can use tomorrow, as opposed to, oh, here's this new curriculum that we need to vet and we need to potentially purchase and get approval. And then it's 18 months down the road before it actually comes into our classroom. And so thinking about those, what are those routines we can use regardless of what our curriculum is, as a way to help build that confidence. Okay, similarly, some of these resources, especially as Data Moves Tabletopper, might be one that you can use for that, of sort of overcoming that overwhelm, but also are more specifically grounded in specific data skills. So I wanted to showcase them here for these two questions that we got on what does it look like for students to make sense of data, not just collect it. Lots of conversations about collecting data. We had some last week, so I think that's where a lot of these questions came in from. And how can I get my students to better at making graphs? So the Data Moves Tabletopper is a resource that we've built out that is actually can be student facing as well. We tried really hard to build it out so you can use it with your students more so, where we're unpacking, sort of lifting up the hood for what do we actually do when we work with data, and what are those different things, with examples and idea promptings for our students to think about. Okay, so I've done this, collected the data. Now what? Right? And to sort of create those stepping stones. You do not need to use every single slide in the Data Moves Tabletopper. Actually, please Do not give your students every single slide all at once, but you can sort of use them as cards. They're 8.5 by 11, so big cards, but that you can sort of dole out like when you want them to be doing what with the data as a way to help them move beyond and sort of build that muscle memory and those mental models of I've collected data, now what? Now what I should do. I've made a graph, now what? Now what should I do? This is also a big piece of like, how do we help our students make graphs better? And then there's just hard actual skills of like making graphs. And I point you towards the Confusion to Clarity, 3 steps for mastered graphing, to really dive into what are these different visualizations? When do they come in at which grade level? How can we do them in CodeApp or Google Sheets, to freely available resources that we all can use in our classrooms. Free being in quotes around Google Sheets because your schools have already paid for it. But thinking about that as sort of resources that you can leverage, that we can point you towards, or also thinking about if you're finding over and over again, okay, my students are collecting data, they're collecting data, but then they don't know what to do with it. It might be a great opportunity to pause and think about, okay, well, so what kind of time am I allocating in my classroom to helping them visualize it, or to exploring the data, or to making meaning from it? And this is not to throw any shade on any of our lesson plan sequence or anything. But oftentimes, especially with our younger students, a lot of time goes towards data collection, which is great and fantastic. And it helps our students build that understanding of the data. And it means they are getting a lot of practice and iteration and repetition on data collection. Huge. But therefore, it's not too surprising that they're struggling to visualize the data, or they're struggling to make sense of it, or they're struggling to do anything beyond the data collection, because that's one of those skills, like we were talking about earlier, that we are consistently hitting really, really well. Awesome. But that means then if we want our students to be able to visualize it, explore the data, make meaning from the data, we got to carve out the time. And time is a limited resource. There are only so many minutes in our class periods, only so many class periods that we have in a given school year. It feels like a lot, I know, but it is also not very many. And so if we are kind of coming to it from the conclusion of like, they're not having enough time doing these other skills that we need them to build, then we have to take something else out. What? I cannot tell you. But I would be happy to have a conversation. We'd be happy to have a conversation with you about what that is and how we've seen others do that. But that's a really independent choice based on your school and your district and your curriculum and your state and your standards and different things like that. But I just want to call out that like the answer is not just more. Something has to get reduced or cut entirely in order to create space for our students to have that, because otherwise, we're not setting our students up for success, and we're not setting our teachers up for success if we're just expecting more to be done in the same amount of time. Life does not work that way. Okay, finally, one question that we got that just like made us so excited, that came through at support@dataspire.org, which is a fantastic way to send us any questions that you might have, was how can I use in-service days this year, love it, to build shared data practices across our departments? First, like, fantastic. Best way to foster discussions is to do it across subject areas, across grade bands, if you absolutely can, so that everybody can realize, it's not just on me, right? That thing I was talking about at the very beginning. We're all in this together, and a rising tide lifts all boats. So let's work together to like lift that tide for all of us and make sure we're rowing in the same direction. Yes, mixing my metaphors, absolutely. But in-service days can create great opportunities to have these conversation starters. Are we going to solve everything? Oh my goodness, no. In a 1-hour conversation that we might have in an in-service? No, but could we generate some ideas on first steps, next steps? What are our priority areas that we want to focus on based on our school, our students, their needs that we are seeing? Absolutely. We'd be more than happy to have a conversation with you. If this resonates and you're like, ooh, yes, that, more than happy to have a conversation. So you can just reach out through our contact page or support@dataspire.org. Book a time. We'd be happy either to talk via email or jump on a Zoom call or a Google Meet to have some conversations about what that might look like specifically for your situation. But yes, this is a great use of 45 minutes, 60 minutes of an in-service day that you have to start sparking those conversations. Just like I said last week, I want to say again, it's not about a right way to do this. It's about having a way to think about it, and just starting to move and small and in focused directions is a great way to go of that. Okay, this is the direction we're moving and how can we think about it? So thank you for the questions. It is so fun to have them come in and so fun to jump in here and share with you some responses to the great questions you have been submitting. Keep them coming. You can send them to support@dataspire.org. You can send them to our tiny.us/ask-us. Please just keep them coming no matter what. But I do want to mention, no strategy share out or ask us anything. In February, we are on the road hard all across the country. Super excited to be having these in-person conversations and in-person learning experiences and professional learning opportunities. So nothing in February. We will be back in March. That information will go live this coming week, or if it has not already, will be live at the same strategy share out spot. So you can still point your colleagues to that if you are interested, but did just want to mention that we're not doing any strategy share outs any information this coming month, but we'll be back in March. But we are still here. So reach out, support@dataspire.org, or to the Ask Us, the tiny URL, Ask Us, any of those ways. I hope you have a wonderful rest of January and February. Those of you that live in the locations of snow, please enjoy it. I am a snow-loving human who does not get it in my backyard anymore. For all the rest of you, enjoy your warm weather or your sunny weather or whatever that you are having. I hope you are doing well. Thank you for everything that you do every day for your students, for your colleagues, for all of those different pieces. Until I see you next time, stay curious, keep exploring, and have fun. Bye.